Chair, you're unmuted to the broadcast and you may begin.
Good afternoon and welcome. If I could get all the members to turn your cameras on if you're attending the meeting virtually. I thank you all for joining on such a short notice for this, what I hope to be a very quick IFC meeting today. Committee Secretary, can I please ask you to call the roll?
Senator Cannizzaro.
Here.
Senator Goycochea.
Here.
Senator Neal.
Here.
Senator Nguyen.
Here.
Senator Scheibel for Senator Harris. Senator Severs-Gansert.
Here.
Vice Chair Dondero Loop.
Here.
Assemblywoman Anderson.
Present.
Assemblywoman Bacchus.
Present.
Assemblywoman Brown May.
Here.
Assemblywoman Dickman.
Here. Here.
Assemblywoman Gorlow.
Here.
Assemblyman Hafen.
Here.
Assemblywoman Howdigi. Assemblywoman Kasama.
Here.
Assemblyman Miller.
Here.
Assemblyman O'Neill.
Here.
Assemblywoman Peters.
Here.
Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong for Assemblyman Watts.
Present.
Assemblyman Yeager.
Here.
Chairman Monroe Moreno.
And I am here. Assemblywoman Howdigi is in the meeting. I didn't hear her. I'm not sure if you did, but she is in the meeting. I thank you all again.
Madam Chair, this is Senator Titus, and I'm here also in person. Thank you. Although they didn't call my name.
Thank you, Senator Titus. Is there anyone else that we missed in our roll call that I missed? Okay, not seeing any. We will have two opportunities for public comment. If you are joining us today and you'd like to make public comment and you want to call in, I ask that you dial 669-900-6833. And when you're prompted, the meeting ID for today is 827-2345-8817, and then please press pound. I ask that you limit your comments to just 2 minutes so that we have an opportunity for everyone to speak. I am going to ask our members that are in the rooms in person in Carson City and in Las Vegas, please let us know if there's anyone there in person with you that would like to make public comment. We will go to them first. So let's go to Carson City first. Do you have anyone there in the room that would like to make public comment?
There's no one here, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. How about in Las Vegas?
Madam Chair, there's nobody here in Las Vegas either.
Perfect. BPS, do we have anyone join us on the phone line that would like to provide public comment today?
Chair, your public line is open and working, but you have no callers at this time.
Thank you so much. Then we will move to the next item on our agenda. There will be another opportunity for public comment at the end of our meeting if there's anyone that would like to provide public comment. Our next item for action will be item C on our agenda. It's the approval of federal grant submitted in accordance with NRS 353.335-2B. And I believe we have the presenters joining us here virtually or in Carson City to make their presentation on this agenda item. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. This is Sherry Brigham, Deputy Director for the Department of Public Safety. You didn't tell me my hair was a mess. Sorry. I have with me to my right, Curtis Palmer, my Senior Fiscal Manager, and to my left, Amy Davey, the Administrator for Traffic Safety. Online, we have Gina Espinoza Salcida. She is with NHTSA, also able to answer questions on the federal side. And also online is Amy Stevenson, Budget Director, and behind us is our Deputy Administrator and our Traffic Safety Fiscal folks. So for the record, this work program requests the addition of federal National Highway Traffic Safety Administration funds to support drug-impaired driving programs. And we are happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I do believe we have a few questions for you. And the first one, can you just elaborate on how these funds became available for the state of Nevada to utilize?
Go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon. This is Amy Davey with the Office of Traffic Safety. Without going into a lot of detail, these were federal funds that had been allocated to another national project that ultimately was not going to be implemented. So on August 18th, NHTSA sent out a Notice of Funding Opportunity, or NOFO, to all the states, saying that they had $1 million of expiring federal funds that were specific to drug-impaired driving initiatives. I met with my staff. We're a grants office, and I met with my staff right away, and we spoke with some of our subrecipients and put together a grant application based on some assessment results that we had from NHTSA on a DUI assessment in January of 2023. And we were notified the very next day, on August 24th, that Nevada was being awarded a significant portion of that $1 million based on our grant application. Gina Espinoza Salcido can add additional details if you have any other questions, but that's kind of there's a very short turnaround time, I know, on this grant. It's unusual for us to receive a Notice of Funding Opportunity on and then a grant award within 24 hours of application. And because the funds were expiring at the end of the federal fiscal year, that put us on a accelerated path to be able to utilize the funds as well.
Perfect. And my next question, before I turn it over to some other members that have questions, will these only be used by the state, or will Clark County, Washoe County, will they be able to utilize the testing equipment as well?
Thank you for the question, Amy Davey, Office of Traffic Safety. The grant that we wrote is actually specific to our local partners. So we anticipate that the funds that come through our office will support local law enforcement agencies. It's my understanding that there are other budgeted funds at the state level for these DUI devices. So we don't anticipate them going to state agencies, but primarily to Washoe and Clark County in support of some major DUI mitigation efforts.
Perfect. And I do have one more question, but I know that we have other members. If they do not ask it, I will come back and ask it myself. Moving on, members, if you have a question, go ahead and raise your hand. I know that Speaker Yeager had a question or two. We'll go to him next, and then we'll go to Senator Sievers-Ganser.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I have a number of questions, and so maybe what I'll do is just ask a few, and then I'll come back later if they don't get asked. But obviously, understand the intent of the program, support it. I guess the first question I had, though, was based off of what Ms. Davey had just said. I think she indicated that there was state funds that could be used for state law enforcement. So my first question is, are we already deploying this technology in the field in Nevada, or would the acceptance of this grant be the first time that we're using this particular machine and testing strips?
It's currently being deployed through local jurisdictions. I know Reno Police Department has a limited number of testing devices, and I believe there are some other agencies. It's not widespread, and I don't know if NHP is using this technology currently. I don't believe. Yeah, we don't believe that it's been implemented through NHP yet.
Okay, thank you. And Madam Chair, if I may, I'll just ask a couple follow-ups on that, if I could.
Go ahead.
Number one was, obviously we've been talking about this driving while impaired with drugs for a long time in the state and how to better combat that. We're pretty good at detecting alcohol roadside, but this obviously is something new for us. And so I just wondered if anyone could let me know, for instance, our current law with respect to informed consent requires that a driver submit to a breath test on the side of the road. Is this technology, is it included or would it be included in our consent, our informed consent laws, or does the particular driver have the option of declining this roadside test in the event that the officer has this technology and wants to use it after a traffic stop?
This is Amy Davey with the Office of Traffic Safety. It's my understanding that it's entirely voluntary, and drivers do have the potential to decline. And in fact, they can decline a preliminary breath test for that matter. So it is entirely voluntary, and that's all I know about it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I guess you're right, they can decline a preliminary breath test, but I think in certain circumstances that can result potentially in your driver's license being revoked. But that's something I can look into separately. I'm glad to hear that. And then I just had a procedural question. So the amount of the grant is $248,624. And I see in the backup documentation, the plan is to purchase 44 machines and then cartridges, test cartridges, which I think are 25 a box, so it comes out to about 1,175 test cartridges. And I just wondered how that ratio was arrived upon. Is that based on experience in the field, or is that like the recommended amount of cartridges per machine? If you could walk me through that a little bit, just so I could get that information, please. Thank you.
Yes, Amy Davey, Office of Traffic Safety. We reached out to our partners, our law enforcement agencies, and we posed this question. We also run the statewide drug recognition expert training program in my office, so we're in constant contact with law enforcement. They're subgrantees of many of our grants. So we reached out to our partners and asked them, how many drug recognition experts do you have in your agency? Would you want to use these devices in a sort of an exploratory or testing kind of manner? Would you want to use them, deploy them for DUI, what we call mobilizations? And so we based really the number on the feedback that we got from our local law enforcement partners as to how many devices they believed they would use. And we also focused it on, part of the grant requirement was to describe the conditions that you would deploy these. So we focused on some upcoming enforcement mobilizations around holidays and events where we tend to see folks that are driving impaired. To be honest, I was surprised. We went in with 248, and I thought, wow, I'll be happy if we get 50,000. And the next day, they approved 248. So I was pretty surprised and excited.
Thank you, Ms. Davey. And Madam Chair, I have some other questions, but I'll just go ahead and yield at this time to other members. And if you wouldn't mind coming back to me at the end if I still have some questions, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Senator Sievers-Gansert.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Ms. Davey, for bringing this forward. It seems like we got a substantial amount of federal dollars, and so I appreciate that you reached out to apply for that grant. And it sounds like we got about 25% of it. And in listening to some of the other questions, it sounds like you've done your homework as far as how we can utilize the money and making sure we've got the cartridges and everything like that. So I guess to me, it looks like you have to have a decision today to be able to order today, even though the invoice isn't due till like November. So I just wanted to check the timeline to see if you need an answer today on this, if we're to move forward.
Thank you for the question. You were cutting out a little bit, but I think I understood the question regarding the timeline. Yes, today is the day that we would have to execute, approve the funds and execute a purchase. We have lined up everything in advance, knowing that we were, clearly coming up against the deadline. And unfortunately, we did come right up against the deadline. There was some unknown circumstances that occurred. We had originally submitted the work program on August 24th and had it approved on August 25th, but I don't believe it reached LCB until September 13th. So that put us right up against the deadline. But we're prepared, honestly, to walk out of the room and phone state purchasing. We've already gone through the RFP process and let them know that we can execute a purchase order. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, I appreciate that you applied for this grant, that we received so much money, and that you're ready to implement it if we're to approve it today.
Thank you. Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you so much for the presentation. Just a quick question about the ability of the test to differentiate different types of substances. We had some questions during the session about being able to test the amount of drugs like fentanyl. And I'm just wondering how sensitive is this testing?
Thank you for the question. You're right. We did have a.
Technology.
Yeah, thank you. This is Amy Davey with the Office of Traffic Safety. Thank you for the question. I did bring with me a stack of information. I'm definitely not the expert here. I did reach out to my experts and get quite a bit of documentation, research, reports, and backgrounds. With respect to the devices, they're not used, as you know, Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong, they're not used to detect impairment. They're used only to detect presence. And this helps a law enforcement officer not make an arrest decision, but make a test decision. Because when a law enforcement officer suspects impairment and goes through all of their testing procedures roadside with standard field sobriety tests and other skills that they've learned, they develop the reasonable cause or the suspicion to arrest someone for DUI and do further testing. This device will show presence of the most. I could pull out my documents and read you the list. There's 6 substances. Fentanyl is not one of them, actually, that it tests for. But it will help an officer order a proper test from there. Our local laboratories, standard practice has sometimes been to only test for what a law enforcement officer orders, or to stop when a 0.10 alcohol is detected. And we know that in the case of DUI, polysubstance use is really the highest element of our DUI drivers are using multiple substances. One of the interesting things, some feedback that we got, I think it was from Reno Police Department, was with the devices that they're using, they actually found a real benefit in that an officer might suspect a certain type of impairment. So in this case, they suspected there was cannabis impairment, and the device helped them actually did not produce any results for cannabis. Instead, this individual was on meth, and so they were able to, from there, order a proper test at the toxicology lab that could determine levels and, the specific toxicology tests that are required for evidential testing. I hope that answered your question.
Assemblywoman, did you have any follow-up?
I'm sorry. Thank you, ma'am. No, that answered my question. I appreciate it. Thank you, Ms. Davey.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Let's see if there's any hands raised. Senator Nguyen, and then Senator Scheibel.
Thank you. I appreciate anytime we have free federal funds that are coming into our state. I do have some concerns just about implementing, taking these free funds and beginning a program like this. And I was wondering if you knew anything about what the peer-reviewed process has been for these testing strips. I know that with the other PBT tests that are done for other DUIs and presumptive testing, the National Academy of Sciences has weighed in. Do you have any of that information, or do you think you would be able to provide that information to
Yes,
us?
thank you for the question, Senator Nguyen. This is Amy Davey with the Office of Traffic Safety. I did do some research on the standardized testing and to your point, the validity, and I actually found quite a bit of research. The National Conference of State Legislatures actually has a pretty good resource section that includes a number of reports, both from the USDOT, Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. In fact, USDOT just approved oral fluid testing as well as the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Association. It's approved by NHTSA. They've created, they've done national pilot projects and created studies and reports on it. National Institutes of Health, the National Traffic Law Center have all published reports on it. And the one that I find kind of, I don't know, for some reason it always strikes me as a little bit funny, is AAA has put out an entire packet on, an entire toolkit on the use of oral fluid to detect drug drivers. I guess I find it funny because for me, AAA is like one step above Costco. You know, next it'll just be in the Costco magazine or something. But to your question, there is a body of work that substantiates oral fluid testing. There are a number of devices on the market, and but there are pretty strong standards for use and for, you know, we know which of the devices and which of the companies manufacture devices that meet sort of those approved standards.
Madam Chair, may I ask a follow-up?
Of course, go ahead.
I know that we have very specific things, like, for example, if you can decline a breathalyzer, you can decline the blood, but if you do, then obviously that puts into jeopardy your license for suspension or revocation on that part. And then is this a way to avoid getting a warrant in these cases where someone's pulled over? Like, are these warrantless searches, or do you find that this falls within the statute that authorizes these other consent tests?
So this is Amy Davey with the Office of Traffic Safety, and I'm not qualified to speak really to the legal standards, other than I can tell you that it's in no way replaces our current practices or requirements for warrant in the case of a refusal. It doesn't supersede any of our current law or practice. And it's my understanding from the literature that Nevada is a state that is considered under its current implied consent statutes and requirements to be eligible to use this as described on a voluntary basis.
I just have concerns that we'll take this money that we're seeing as an opportunity because it's free federal money, and then there'll be constitutional or legal challenges, and then we'll have to end up throwing out all these DUI potential convictions because our statutes don't authorize this. And I believe that there was legislation that was proposed in either this last session or the session before that didn't make its way through the legislative process regarding this technology. So is that different, or are you aware of that legislation that didn't make it through, I think, in the last legislative session?
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for the question.
like the growth of infrastructure.
Yeah, absolutely. This is Amy Davey. You're right. You're correct. There were two pieces of legislation that touched on DUI testing. One piece of legislation did not pass through Senate Growth and Infrastructure. That legislation was to add authorizing language to statute for the use of oral fluid testing, specific authorizing language. And I believe, I don't want to speak for Senator Harris, and I don't think that anybody else is on the call that was in that hearing, but I believe that there was, to your point, substantial questioning about whether we wanted to put in statute something to the effect that would create another standard for reasonable cause, so, or like the PBT does now. So that bill did not go out of committee, and the bill that did go out of committee was related to the Committee on Testing for Intoxication, which in Nevada we have a committee of experts, if you will, toxicologists that are charged with studying and creating standards for DUI testing in Nevada. And prior to this last legislative session, their authorizing language was specific to breath alcohol program. And I think it was AB 239 passed that allowed them the ability to study and collect evidence and do confirmatory testing on oral fluid devices. So they actually have recommend to the Department of Public Safety, and they did recommend that the Department of Public Safety undertake some type of let's see, I'm sorry, I'll just read this. They call themselves CODI. The CODI members agreed the purposes should be to collect data on drug presence, to compare the roadside oral fluid device results to forensic toxicology results where possible, to assist officers in determining evidentiary testing decisions, and to assist with making pretrial supervision and post-trial treatment decisions for persons who are arrested and prosecuted. It was made clear that oral fluid testing results would not be used for officer arrest decisions. Since the device is not test for impairment, the officers in all cases must base their arrest on evidence of impairment and whether the evidence meets the legal standard of probable cause. So that was coming from the committee. Separate from that, though, it's not that our office is seeking to develop a program. I mean, honestly, I can purchase these devices now with the federal funds. They're not illegal. They're eligible for purchase with federal funds. We made a decision to propose this grant based on the purchase of the devices for a couple of reasons. One is the short turnaround time. We knew we couldn't go stand up a data collection system or some kind of other elaborate program. Secondly, when we polled our law enforcement agencies, they said we'd like to use this as a resource in our DUI mitigation efforts. So that's really how we landed on it. We're not intending to start a program per se at the state level. I'm certainly not intending to do that with the grant funds. I'll turn around and run what we call an RFP through our regular grant process and let local law enforcement agencies apply for this. So we're not setting up a state program with this grant.
Thank you. I have other questions, but I'll go ahead and defer. I know some other members probably have questions as well.
Thank you. Then we will move on to Senator Scheibel.
Thank you so much. Oops. So, and I apologize. I missed the very first part of the presentation. As you can see in my office, I had a client call me with a DUI question that I thought would only take 5 minutes. It took 15 minutes. And so I just wanted to get some clarity though, because maybe the testing in Reno is different, or maybe the technology has changed. But in my experience, there has always only been, one test that is run for all of the prohibited substance or all of the controlled substances aside from alcohol. So basically, if an officer suspects that there is impairment other than alcohol, they get a blood test either through consent or through a warrant, and then that blood test is a whole panel is run to see if there is, cocaine, methamphetamine, cannabis, and the other detectable substances. So are you telling me that there's actually a situation in which an officer would have somebody in custody and they would pick option A for cannabis impairment and option B for methamphetamine impairment?
This is Amy Davey with the Office of Traffic Safety. I'm not telling you that because I can't speak exactly to the process of the local testing labs. I know in Clark County, it's primarily Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department testing lab. Also, Henderson has a testing lab. In my previous conversations with the forensic labs, they were working towards aligning their processes and standards across the state, but they had developed processes and standards for how things were requested and how things were tested that were unique to their agencies and organizations. So without asking them to comment on that, I wouldn't want to provide any additional speculation.
Okay, so if I could have a quick follow-up, then could you just briefly explain for me again what the value of the test is? If on the side of the road, now an officer can do, an oral fluid test to say, oh, this person is presumptively positive for methamphetamine or presumptively positive for cocaine, how does that change the rest of the interaction versus today, where they say that, they failed or they had 6 clues on the HGN and 3 clues on the walk and turn and 1 clue on the modified Romberg, and they suspect that they're under the influence of methamphetamine. How does that change the safety of the community by having a, chemical presumption of being under the influence?
This is Sherry Brigham, Deputy Director with the Department of Public Safety. Amy will probably pull some specific statistics, but again, when an officer is doing all that testing and he needs to make a choice on whether or not he's going to do a blood test or tell them that they have to do a blood test or arrest them and all of that, the decision isn't, oh, I'll do another test to do all the varied drugs. They do not automatically test for the varied drugs because it's an expensive test. So what this will do for an officer is tell them what to test for. That's all.
And Senator Scheibel, if I may, this is Amy Davey. I'm reading from a support letter that we received from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration on this grant, and where their interest is in supporting states with these funds. And this is written by our regional administrator, who, as I mentioned, is on the phone. And in this letter, she states that oral fluid testing devices have significant potential impact for Nevada, including the removal of drug-impaired drivers, advanced data collection and analysis, reduced toxicology costs, and officer training and skill building. In my notes, I've written that the devices are used in a screening capacity to confirm suspicion of drug use. After law enforcement conducts a standardized field sobriety test, they're used to assist with making those next step decisions and not the totality of the arrest decision. I know nobody's asked me this question. This is Amy. This is a new, I know we're having a lot of good conversation about this in Nevada, which is, I think it's, anytime something's new, we need to talk a lot about it, and we need to have a lot of conversation, and we need to figure out if it fits. And I appreciate that. It's not new overall. It's not new nationally. And and there's a body of work, and there are states that have actually adopted it both into implied consent standards and have made it mandatory. So it's new to us, and it's good to keep having conversations about it. And I'm happy to submit as much documentation as I can about it. Again, we wrote this grant this way because we wanted to bring the funding in and find a use for it to support local law enforcement. I'm not here to propose a new program. I'm not here to propose new legislation. I'm not here as a oral fluid testing expert, for sure. You know, our intent was to go after grant funds and support local law enforcement.
Senator Scheibel, did you have any other follow-ups?
No, thank you so much.
Okay, then we'll go to Senator Titus.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I just want to acknowledge a thank you for putting in for the grant expeditiously. And from a medical viewpoint, I think this is a good thing. We all know that 0.08 alcohol blood level has really nothing to do with impairment, that some people on certain body sizes at 0.08, they think they can be fine, but we as a body had to come up with a number to say this is not acceptable. And a lot of science and a lot of data went into that before we actually were able to pass a law and say, hey, regardless of whether you think you're impaired or not, this is a cutoff limit. We unfortunately, with the legalization of marijuana in our state and the influx of illegal drugs, we don't have a good template on where we need to be from a numbers point on where do we start and say, hey, if you have F50, THC, whatever, you know, you're impaired. We just don't know that yet. But we can't ever figure that out if we don't get the data. And so I think that this, at least with screening, and I know one of the senators asked, well, what do you do with this information? How is this going to help? I see it personally as truly helping the law enforcement officer. I was just at a meeting earlier today about behavioral health and mental health and how the officers are changing their approach on behavior. I think this not only will help the officer, but absolutely help the person that they pulled over, if it's a mental health issue, if it's a drug impairment issue, or what are they even looking at here? Does this person need to go to the hospital? Do they need to go to jail? And so thank you for all the work. There is a question in this, Madam Chair. So with the information they get, I know in your RFPs, you're going to put out RFPs and for folks who are going to use this, is there going to be a requirement that they not share the person's name and that the privacy and the legal issues of it, but share the information like of the 10 arrests or people that they pulled over, X number were positive, so that we can actually put this to a positive nature and maybe use this for some information gather as we move forward as legislators to actually help us understand impairment and help the officers do a better job.
Thank you for the question. Senator Titus, this is Amy Davey with the Office of Traffic Safety, and yes, there's a keen interest from the forensic laboratories in conducting studies against their own toxicology testing so that they can come back and bring information to this body in future sessions, bring information to the department about the validity of, we've seen the pilot programs, we've read the literature, we know that there's a very strong scientific background to using the devices, but our own testing labs and our own toxicologists and those that are charged with overseeing our DUI program are interested in collecting that data as well. So are interested in what did the device tell us it was detecting, and what did our laboratory equipment did our laboratory equipment confirm? So as part of AB 239, their interest is in the data collection and in the studying of how this device is assisting with that data.
Well, thank you for that, and thank you, Madam Chair, for the question.
Thank you so much. I believe Senator Neal has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just really quick, I know this has been a robust conversation. I was just trying to understand, is there anything in that federal grant that is limiting or that limits the state from adding additional conditions upon the acceptance of that money? Or is it just pretty open where the state, this committee can say, all right, you accept this money, but we want these particular conditions on top of the reporting requirements that the feds are asking you upon the acceptance?
Thank you. This is Amy Davey with the Office of Traffic Safety. That is a great question. When when we write a grant, we write it to the standards that are released in the Notice of Funding Opportunity. If it's all right, and if she's available, I'd like to ask the NHTSA Regional Administrator, Gina Espinosa-Salcido. Gina, do you feel like you can comment to Senator Neal's question about adding additional requirements to the funds if we choose to receive them? I think she's on the line.
Thank you, Amy.
Oh.
Hello, this is Gina Espinosa-Salcido, National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. Can you hear me okay?
We can, and welcome to the meeting. Thank you.
Is everyone? Oh, thank you so much. Yes, we would be open to conditions if the state chose to place those on this grant. As it stands right now, the state has flexibility to expend them on the equipment. That's what has been designated so far. We don't have additional requirements other than some reporting that will follow. But at this point, we were very, very excited for Nevada to accept the opportunity to very quickly put a grant together and to test some equipment to support their drug recognition expert program in the state. So we would certainly be receptive to additional conditions if you chose to place them. I'm curious what those might be if you're thinking of some.
Madam Chair, can I have a follow-up?
Of course, go ahead.
I think just to try to get more information around the flexibility, what are the parameters in which we can operate in to give those conditions, right? You want to know what they are, but in order to determine what conditions we would be able to legally state, I want to know what's the box in which we're operating in, right? So what can't be a condition? I guess we can start with the negatives.
I'll comment first. This is Amy Davey with the Office of Traffic Safety. From my understanding of working,
I would have to go back and probably consult on that.
I think the one thing that we're aware of, Senator Neal, in terms of the box that we have to stay in is that time frame. We've asked a couple of times about extending the time frame for receiving the award today, and they're unable to do that. So I think that's one item in the box is the time frame. I think the other item in the box is when we look at the funding, and my understanding of the funding, it's specific to DUID program support, so drug impaired driving support at a state level. They've given a list in the Notice of Funding Opportunity of the items that qualified under that approach of DUID. They also required that we base this on. They wanted us to utilize their DUID assessment tool. Fortunately, Nevada just underwent a full NHTSA impaired driving program assessment in January of 2023. So they were very familiar with the recommendations they had made to the state, and we were able to use those recommendations as a foundation for applying for the grant. So I know those three things were the conditions of the grant, and I don't know if Gina can think of any other things that are in the box.
No. No, Amy, those were the conditions.
Sherry Brigham, Deputy Director with the Department of Public Safety. I do want to add that any information that is gathered, mainly that the test results taken matched the forensic evidence or didn't, can be shared. And if there's concerns that these particular devices may not be accurate, that information would prove that out. I'm sure that we could find all sorts of information that we can share based on the numbers that we would be able to gather. There'd be no restriction on sharing it. Is that correct? I'm sorry, I was addressing Gina.
Yes, sure, you are correct. Any data or information that you would get with through part of this process goes to your program. There is a reporting element at the end, but the conditions for that.
I believe we.
Deputy Director, sorry. I know we're
We are
losing
going.
Gina.
Yes, we are. I think my question would be, in addition to the information on the test outcomes, would you have the data and information on the demographics of who actually the tests were performed on? We would be able to get that information as well, perhaps on a quarterly basis to the IFC, so we know who is using the tests, who the tests are being used on, and what the results are of those tests.
Is that thing up and running?
Amy Davey, Office of Traffic Safety. Certainly that would that could be a request we would pass through to our law enforcement partners that are agreeing to or that apply for these funds. Again, it's not a state program. We just intend to offer a grant application opportunity to local jurisdictions, and we could certainly write that into the grant requirement is the reporting of additional information. It would just be up to the law enforcement agencies if they felt that they could report that information, or but we could certainly write that in as a requirement of the grant.
I think that would be very helpful. It may not be a state grant, it's a federal grant, but the test will be utilized on Nevada residents and citizens. So I think getting that demographic information would be extremely helpful and beneficial to this body. And I think a quarterly report would be not a lot to ask for from our law enforcement agencies. I think at the end of the day, we all want to be safe on our roads, and we want everyone using the roads to be safe. So this is another tool in the toolbox that law enforcement can use, which could be great, but we want to make sure that it's used properly and who it's actually being used on. I have Senator Gocochea next.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and we're really looking at the teeth on this gift horse. I know. I guess I'm really struggling with it, and I just want to walk through the procedure. Clearly, in my mind, this is just another tool to remove impaired drivers. But, okay, an officer pulls a suspect over. Clearly, he would have to have, a reason for doing that. All right, after the field sobriety test, in that case, then he doesn't detect any real alcohol or smell of alcohol or otherwise. So in that case, I would see where you would go to the oral fluid test because clearly he's impaired, but it doesn't seem to be alcohol. It just makes sense to me, and we're taking impaired drivers off the road. And again, this is federal dollars. It's a gift horse. He might be a little short in the teeth, but let's not give him away. Thank you.
Thank you. And I see a hand raised. I'm not sure if it's Assemblyman O'Neill or Assemblywoman Dickman that would like to speak next, but it's in that box. And you are muted.
Okay, I think, am I unmuted now?
Yes, you are. We can hear
Oh,
you.
thank you. I just want to, Miss Davy, if I understand correctly, this test has been utilized by Reno PD for X period of time. So, and it's also been approved by NHTSA and other agencies. So the validity of the test has already been proven. So we're just trying to prove what's been proven. If we put these requirements on, these additional requirements, they're going to take up officers' time, take up personnel time that they could be utilizing in their main course of operation. Is that correct, that this has already been a validated testing procedure, or did I misunderstand?
Amy Davey, Office of Traffic Safety. Nationally, it's not unknown, and it is used in, as I said, in several states and jurisdictions. So there is a body of scientific work. There's a body of legal work behind it. Again, I'm not a legal expert, and I know this is a really interesting conversation and an interesting technology. I'm going to throw myself under the bus here. I thought I was just applying for a grant, and so I'm a little nervous about where this has gone. But it's a good conversation. It's a good, I think we were having these conversations 10 years ago about autonomous vehicles. I can remember a lot of preliminary conversations about vetting out how that fits. And I'm sorry I don't have, I'm not an expert in how it fits in every way, shape, or form. But yeah, I'll stop.
Chair, may I do a follow-up, please?
Go ahead.
But you said earlier, Reno PD is using this, correct, now? And do you know of any other law enforcement agencies actually in Nevada or any of the adjoining states that are utilizing it?
Yes. Honestly, it's not illegal. It's voluntary. So a law enforcement agency, if they own this device, can use this device. And they do. So it's not that my office is trying to disseminate, a new practice or start a pilot program. There are law enforcement agencies in our state that use it now. And have used it.
What agencies?
I'm not gonna. I don't want to comment. Just because I don't want to put anybody on record. I know that I can get a list. I'll get you a list, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair, for the time.
You're so welcome. And if you could supply that list to our committee staff and they can share it with all of the committee members, that would be wonderful. And please don't feel nervous. It's what we're supposed to do, is ask the hard questions. We understand that other agencies have been utilizing this and they've been doing that through their own budgets, and this is coming through the state. So there's a natural concern because there has been conversations about this in a few sessions. So making sure that we do get the information, since this is something new for all of us, as to how effective these tests are and who is being tested in our state. But please don't be nervous. I think that is it, and I will get back to Speaker Yeager.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to echo your comments. Ms. Davey, don't be nervous. I'm supportive of this program. I think the interest you're seeing from the members is just to try to understand this. And this conversation is one we've been having for a long time. And I think depending on how this program goes, future legislatures may be asked to help support this kind of program in state if federal funds are not available. So I think that's where a lot of the questions are coming from. To your point, I did find some information that the Michigan State Police have been using this program. There was some data provided. It's actually on the Abbott webpage, who's the maker of the actual, I guess it's I don't remember what it's called, but anyway, about 85 to 90% confirmatory accuracy. And so I'm glad to hear that that reporting will happen in the state. I think it's important just for us to know that these tests are accurate. It sounds like they are based on other states' programs. So I don't have any concerns there. I guess the only process question I had would be this. You had talked about, obviously you sign this, you get the material, you get the testing strips, you get the testing machines, and then you're going to do like a sort of a sub-grant, I guess, to local agencies to decide how to actually deploy these out in our local communities. And this might be a question for down the road, but I just wondered if you had put some thought to how you will make that determination of where these get deployed in our local communities, because I would think that law enforcement would be knocking at your door wanting to have these machines because it makes life a little bit easier for them in the field. So have you gotten to the point where you've thought about how you're going to administer this in the event that there's more demand than supply available because under the federal grant?
Thank you for the question, Amy Davey, Office of Traffic Safety. I believe there will be more demand than supply. We've already had, to your question about the funding, we've already had requests for access from our law enforcement officers to these devices. Separate from this, right? We get my office brings in $7 million a year in federal funds for traffic safety programs. So as far as how they'll be distributed, the way we wrote the grant, the way the grant was, the notice of funding opportunity was constructed, it talked about to support, there's a specific line in there that it gives a number of ways that you can use the funds, and one of them is to support drug-impaired driving through oral fluid testing through a DUI task force or a DUI, I think they use the word strike force or something. I don't remember the word they used. So when you write a grant, if you want to get the grant, you basically say back to them what they said to you so that you can qualify for the grant. So what we did is we said we have mobilizations that go on year-round with our law enforcement partners around Super Bowl, for instance, around St. Patrick's Day. And so the way we wrote the grant is we said, our data shows us that our impaired driving issues are high in Clark County and Washoe County, and so our intent is to make these available to those jurisdictions to be used as part of their mobilization efforts. And then we gave some examples of those mobilizations, like I said, around high impaired driving activities or events or times. So I believe you will see these going primarily, these devices will be primarily going to Washoe and Clark County agencies.
Thank you, Ms. Davey, and I think that makes a lot of sense to use those when those activities are already happening. Madam Chair, could I just ask one last question, and then I will yield for the remainder of the meeting?
Thank you. One last question.
Ms. Davey, it's a little bit off topic, but in looking at this technology, one thing I think we've had discussions about in the past, or at least you've been part of those discussions, are the breath interlock devices that DUI offenders need to put on their vehicles. And of course, those only test for alcohol, but often individuals who are convicted of driving under the influence of drugs nonetheless have to get breath interlock devices. I just wondered if you were aware of any technology like this that we have that is being looked at for breath interlock devices for vehicles. Obviously, this is about testing in the field, but just wanted to know if you had heard of any advancements, because I think that would be a very welcome technological advance for those who have been convicted of driving under the influence of drugs, to make sure that they're not continuing to do it through the breath interlock device.
Amy Davey, Office of Traffic Safety, I 100% agree. Personally, yes. The short answer is yes. That technology is under development, and why wouldn't it be? If you can do it with this device, then and it's proven to be effective, then I would foresee that coming additionally. It's sort of like there are people on this call that will know more than I do about this, but like what they call scram bracelets, or those type of devices, those dermal devices that when somebody has been ordered not to use substances, there's a number of different types of detection that currently goes on. So I agree with you. It would be welcome and it would be appropriate. We know that polysubstance use, again, is the highest component of DUI driving. Polysubstance being a combination of alcohol and or multiple drugs. So, you know, as far as the ignition interlock device goes, you know, people who, we know that people who have substance use or substance abuse issues frequently mix alcohol and other things, and it is only detecting alcohol. So yes, I agree with you. It would be welcome, and I think we will see that. In fact, I think we'll see it built into cars someday, but that's just my, I think we'll see that as sort of like airbags someday.
Right, I believe that was our last question. I thank you so much for the presentation. And with that, we will move to anyone who would like to provide testimony in support. If we have anyone there in Carson City that would like to come up to the table to testify in support, I
Madam
invite you
Chair,
now.
you don't need to do support opposition or neutral on the IFC.
Oh, that's it.
I think you hit your mute button.
Thank you. That's what happens when I move. And so we've had a very robust conversation. And in that conversation, there was discussion on reporting. There's already reporting within the grant that has to be given to the federal government. And it is the chair's request that we approve this item. And with that reporting to the federal government, also included with reporting to the IFC on a quarterly basis. And in addition to that, the agencies that will receive the grant that will be deploying these testing and the demographics of those tests, who those tests are performed on, and the results of those tests. And with that, I would accept a motion to approve as stated.
So moved.
Second.
Madam Chair, I have a question.
Before we go there, could you state your name of who made the motion?
Chandra Summers Armstrong.
And thank you so much. And the second?
Senator Dondero Loop.
Thank you so much. We have a motion from Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong, a second from Senator Dondero Loop, and discussion on the motion. We have Senator Ganser.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question was about the timing of the reporting. You said that they're required to do some federal reporting. So does the reporting that you also asked for the demographics and everything line up with the federal requirements? Or are we creating two levels of reporting, one to the feds, or is the feds already quarterly too?
I do not know exactly what their reporting is to the feds, but I like quarterly reporting to this body.
Okay. Just thinking about the reporting. Can you hear me still?
I can hear you still.
Okay. Yeah. Just so I think that's probably fine. I mean, we tend to just have for information items, right, that come up whenever we have meetings. And I guess they would just provide that quarterly, and then whatever the next IFC meeting for which they would make the deadline, we would see those reports then.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Is there any other questions or discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. We are in 3 different places. So that will make it just a little difficult. So if you are not in favor of the motion, I will ask you to raise your hand. But anyone in favor of the motion, go ahead and say aye.
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 Aye. Aye. Aye. And if you are against the motion, if you'll raise your hand, if you are virtual. Not seeing anyone virtually. Is there anyone in Carson City that is a nay? Not hear anyone in Carson City. Is there anyone in Las Vegas that has a name? And the motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much again for the presentation and joining us today. And I thank you all for the conversation on this item. We will move to the next item on our agenda, which is information only. And it's something that we have at every one of our IFC, and that's a report from the Department of Business and Industry Housing Division.
Good afternoon, Chairman Ro Moreno, Vice Chair Don Darrell Lute, members of the committee, Steve Acroth, Administrator of the Nevada Housing Division. For the record, want to focus in on the report that we've provided to you in 3 areas. And really this goes to the spreadsheet that's entitled HM&I Award Status, dated 9/20/23. You'll notice up in the box in the left-hand corner of the spreadsheet, some numbers, the overall numbers. What I'd like to point out to this, in this particular update to the report, is that our obligated funding is $226,999,999, which represents 45.68% of the funding available. And as a reminder to the committee, the obligation date for these funds is December 31st, 2024, roughly 15 months away. And at the last IFC on August 9th, when we provided this report to this body, we had expended 25.7%. So in a little over a month, another 20% has been obligated. So we're making great strides in that area. Second thing I'd like to point out on the report is you'll see the yellow boxes for the agreement status, which talks about discussions ongoing. And this is typically highlighted in the yellow. And those discussions, 160 million of funding has been awarded specifically to 4 entities that form the bulk of these discussions ongoing. And that's the Reno Housing Authority, the Southern Nevada Regional Housing Authority, Ovation Development, and Nevada Hand. This 160 million represents 32% of the funding. Please know these are traditional partners, historic partners that the division works with virtually on a daily basis to provide affordable housing in the state. Many of these projects require bond funding. We've earmarked enough bonding capacity to support these projects. Typically, there's an extensive amount of due diligence that is required before bonds are awarded to the project, which is why you see just kind of a broad discussions ongoing indicated. We've been in contact with all of our awardees, including these 4, regarding the obligation date and the need to have the financing to ensure that the projects proposed will meet the obligation date, and to be certain that we either have bond approval or submissions by spring of next year. And then the last thing I want to focus in on is some results. We actually have some results to provide to the committee, specifically in regards to the division's homeowner program. And that's listed in the third identified funding of home ownership and rehabilitation. The first green line there, which is $7.5 million of down payment assistance, allowing $15,000 to eligible home buyers in Nevada. We're well over 50% of that funding reserved, almost $4.2 million, which will support $78 million of mortgages. 249 of those 279 reservations are in Clark County. So those are reservations, people who have worked with our various lenders to obtain homes, but actually 203 loans have currently been funded, resulting in $3 million in expenditures as opposed to the 2.5 that's indicated here. So in the last week, we've advanced more. 40% of the allocated funding in this particular tranche is out the door on the street and people have been able to purchase homes. Give you some statistics in those regards. 200, in the reservations, 204 of the reservations, so going back to the 297 reservations, 204 of those reservations are for households under 75,000 annual income. The average household size is 3. The average purchase price of the home is $297,000. The average household income is $64,000. The average mortgage rate or average mortgage is $279,985. At today's rate, a 30-year mortgage for $279,985 equals about $1,886 per month. Doesn't include taxes, insurance, or HOA fees. But certainly, if we can get people qualified, that mortgage at $1,886 probably is pretty comparable to a lot of rents that folks are paying. So it's a credit to this body for allowing us to do this, helping out currently, 203 households that have received a home under this program. And with that, I will wrap up and be available for questions.
Thank you so much. Members, any questions? Remember, this is just an informational. Senator Neal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I just had a quick question. So recently there was a report that dropped out saying that there has been an increase in foreclosures in Nevada. And I know we still have a foreclosure mediation or mitigation plan in Nevada. Have you been getting any information on how folks are basically getting into the houses and because they're so maxed out with income, they're not actually able to stay in the house even after they get assistance to pay the mortgage?
Steve Acroft for the record. As far as this program goes, we do track that information. It's probably too new to see if any of the recipients of this funding have fallen out of the program. But through our typical programs, yes, we do track who ends up getting into a foreclosure situation. But I don't have it for this specific program.
Okay, thank you for that. And I'll share that report because apparently Nevada is now high on the list for foreclosures, where we're ranking ourselves back up similar to where we were in like 2011. And so I just wanted to see if you had any additional information on the factors that are driving it.
Steve Acroft for the record, I don't have information on the factors. However, to your point, and to any other legislators that need the information regarding where to send constituents who might have a foreclosure situation, that's the Nevada Affordable Housing Assistance Corporation, or NAHAC, and their website is nahac.org. Again, not germane to this particular program, but they were provided $121 million in homeowner assistance funds, which is on the street. And I think they have burned, right off the top of my head, through about 30% of that funding, and that funding is still available until December of 2026.
Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Members, any other questions for Mr. Acroft? All right, not seeing any. Thank you so much for the reporting. Look forward to seeing you at our next meeting. Make sure we get all those dollars out the door.
Now, of course, I wouldn't miss it.
All right, and that brings us to our last item on today's agenda, and that's our second item of public comment. BPS, do we have anyone joining us on the phone line that would like to make public comment?
Thank you, Chair. The public line is open and working, but we have no callers at this time.
Thank you so much. And I will ask our members in Carson City, have we had anyone join us there in Carson City that would like to make public comment?
Madam Chair, there's no one here in Carson City. Thank you.
Thank you. In Las Vegas, do we have anyone there?
There's nobody here, Madam Chair.
All right. So with that, I will thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedules for this unexpected meeting, but we had a great conversation. Enjoy the rest of the week and your weekend. And with that, this meeting is adjourned.